it completely. Can I explain again the malarial life cycle you're saying?
Yeah, yes, sir. Like from the mosquito host out, like I remember that part.
Okay. Okay. So, Iram, would you like to give a head start on this? So it will be a quick revision for you and revision for Rabi as well. And I'll keep pitching in if you leave something. Will it work for you, Iram?
Yes, sir. I'll try.
Okay. Yeah, perfect.
So it starts with the mosquito bite. Mosquito bite will inject sporozoites, and sporozoites will infect the human liver cells, hepatocytes, and from there they'll start replicating, dividing in the liver cells. From the liver
Mhm.
cells, they travel to the bloodstream, and in the bloodstream, they probably burst at a stage, and while the bursting they release hemozoin, this toxin substance which causes high fever for 3 to 4 days.
Yeah, and also just to add to Iram's point here, the bursting happens also in the liver. So when the Anopheles affected Anopheles female mosquito bites the human, the first organ where these sporozoites go is liver to get a safe place, a safe house. And they replicate there asexually, and they also burst the hepatocytes to come out in the bloodstream. But the thing is that because that's internal in an organ, it does not have a systematic effect on the body. When they burst again, when in the RBCs, so that happens on a periodic cycle, and that leads to hemozoin toxin release, which leads to these periodic chills as a symptom. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, from there, a different female mosquito will bite the infected person, and this parasite will enter to the mosquito. And these are stored in the salivary glands of the mosquito.
Right. But before that, when they are reproducing asexually in the RBCs, they also towards the end start making the gametocytes, which are basically sexual stages of these sporozoites. So they are no longer sporozoites, they are no longer asexually reproducing. They divide into two different male and female gametocytes. And that is what goes inside the mosquito's salivary gland and the mosquito's gut when the female mosquito takes bites and takes blood from an infected person. Okay, so that goes in the gut, and in the mosquito's gut, that fertilization between the male and the female gametocyte takes place. And then, as Iram said, the sporozoites, which are again asexual stage, are back in the salivary glands, right? Because gut is also connected to the salivary gland. And then that mosquito is now ready to infect another human through a bite. Is that clear, Rabia? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, yes, sir.
We went from step 1 to step 8. Do you have any doubts in between?
No, sir, no doubt. It's all clear.
Okay, perfect. So in today's class, and I also ask you to go back and read about the other common diseases which are caused by other protozoans and worms. Did you do that, everyone? Amoebiasis, Ascariasis, Elephantiasis, and the ringworm. Did you read all of that? Just a read up would have been fine. Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Iram did that.
Yes, sir.
Aisha. Okay, so do you find any doubts, any difficulty in that portion? It's just mostly factual, like information based, not much of concepts. So that's why I relied on you to do that. Anyone has any doubts in that section? No worries, Parker. Good evening. Is your microphone still not functional?
No, sir, it's functioning.
It's functional. Okay, that's great. So you could just have unmuted and said good evening.
Good.
You're thinking not to disturb the class.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, don't think like that. Do disturb the class. That's what the class is for. Okay, so I don't mind disturbance at all, actually. That's a natural, that's very natural. If there is a class and if students are learning, they cannot learn in utter silence. They can just sleep in utter silence. There has to be disturbance. Anyways, so if none of you have any problem with the common diseases, their causative, yes,
So, is there any treatment for elephantiasis?
uh, at early stages, if detected at an early stage, elephantiasis, um, I can't say it can be like the infection can be, you can get rid of it, okay? But the point is, for elephantiasis, people only get to know that elephantiasis has happened when the lymphatic vessels and gets infected to a level where there's no turning back. And also it moves from lymphatic vessels, lymphatic nodes to the genitalia. So that whole limb, the foot, right from the um, lower abdomen where the hips begin and the thighs begin till the toe, everything is infected at the same time. So there is no progression from top to bottom most of the times, or bottom to top, where you can, control it. It happens in the limb. And mostly the deformities many a times are not completely treatable. You can save the person, extend the life, but you cannot undo or rewind all the infection in case of filariasis. It's also called filariasis because it's a filarial worm that causes. It's very slowly developing chronic inflammation. And that's why humans don't die instantly from this. So they also live with the infection, and the infection also lives with them for years. So at early stage detected, yes, but if not treated properly and if the infection reaches to a level where you can see and say that it is elephantiasis because the foot is looking like an elephant's foot, then it's a lost cause. Okay,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or doubts from the section, people? If no doubts, then in today's class, let's start with a very important concept on which both the disease and the treatment aspect is based on, and that is called immunity. It's a word that we all of us have heard a lot, but sadly not everyone understands how it works. So there is a lot of misconception about immune system. There is also a lot of misconception about how infection works, and people, that was a very major cause in the parts of societies that are not properly informed or aware about how immunity works and how viruses work, that pandemic spread so much. So it's very important for all of us to know about our immune system specifically. It's fine if you don't know about, let's say, your digestive system too. Like, it's not fine for me, but if I had to choose which ones to sacrifice, I'll say, okay, fine. If you don't know about your digestive system, if you don't know about your lymphatic system, it's still okay. But if you don't know about your immune system and how it works and how it can be attacked and fooled by viruses and bacteria, it also has um, social, what you can say, concerns and costs that we saw during the COVID, right? So I believe that this topic you should pay great attention to, not just because it's an exam, but also because it matters in your day-to-day life, right? Now, talking about immunity, anyone would like to quickly tell me, what do you understand by immunity? What is immunity in short? Anyone? What is immunity?
Uh, maybe the ability of the body to fight off germs or something.
Uh, yes, exactly. So it's a very simple, to the point and correct definition: the ability of the body to fight germs, right? Everything in this definition is very generalized, and that's why it's like the best overall definition you can give. But would you like to give me some insight? So what do we mean by ability of the body? Can you see what I'm sharing to all of you, or you can just see the notebook?
Yes.
Um, what can you see the um, a page that I'm
No, sir,
sharing?
we can't.
No.
No, yeah. What do you see? You see the notebook? Wait,
The whiteboard, sir.
the whiteboard. Okay, okay. Wait. Okay. Anyways, so let's come back to whiteboard. Yes. So you were saying the ability of the body to fight germs. So what do you think is in the body that fight germs? Because when we see these advertisements where people are selling immunity boosters or anything that helps with your immunity, these are very misleading. You know, a shield will come out of from the center of your chest and become bigger, and then there is an aura around that person's image, and everyone is protected. So we have this very misleading concept of what immunity is. So how do you think body fights anything, germs for that matter? Go ahead.
Antibodies.
Antibodies. Now, to the very generalist, you went directly to the very specific antibodies. So we have to connect the bridge in between. Uh, so what makes, yes, Rabia is giving an answer in the chat through WBCs. And yes, that's great beginning. What are WBCs?
So,
Yeah. Yes, Hiram.
so before WBCs, there are barriers,
Yeah,
a lot of barriers that
exactly.
protect us.
Right. So Iram, yeah, Iram came one step out, and she's like, okay, let's not go anywhere inside the body. She means to say that there are barriers, just like they show us in those schematics and advertisements. There are barriers on our body that fights anything. Iram, over to you.
Yeah, like if I talk
Yeah,
about
go ahead. Go
skin,
ahead.
skin is the largest organ and it acts as the main barrier. Then if I talk
Okay.
about the mouth, we have got saliva that will probably trap trap the antigen, whatever that goes in.
Right. You're correct. You're correct. So you're saying that skin is also a part of our immunity. Saliva is also a part of our immunity. And then as you will keep going in, you will find that we have acid in the stomach, and that probably not just, yeah, apart from helping us in digesting the food, do you think it's also helping us in fighting the germs? Of course it is, because if you
Yes.
have, yeah, if you ingest germs through food, which we always do, let me tell you. So we have a notion that if I'm eating a food from a roadside, that might contain germs, and if I'm eating a food which is inside my house, it does not contain a germ. First of all, that's not completely true. Yes, the truth is that the load of the pathogen, or the load of the germs, will be 100,000, multifold more in a roadside food stall than it is at your home. So in home, we try to maintain, and we do maintain a lot more hygiene than it is maintained in a roadside stall, or anywhere else, in a restaurant or something, in a public kitchen also. So why we should not eat from a roadside is because our bodies are not, over the time we have evolved to eat more and more hygienic food. So that's why the load which is there in the roadside food, it will overwhelm our body's immune system, and we will catch infection quickly. Uh, and comparatively, when we eat home cooked food, that still will contain few germs here and there, but that will be taken care by the saliva and the acid in the abdomen. So it will not cause so much of an effect that our immune system as a whole has to be alerted and has to show response. So it will be like teeny tiny problem. So that's why. But if you will see other organisms, for example, if you see a stray dog, stray dogs drink water from anywhere where they get water. They can even drink water from leakage in the sewer lines and stagnant water around, lying around anywhere, but they don't get overwhelming infection all the time, right? Because for them their tolerance and their immune system is evolved like that. For us it has not, because we have taken care of our hygiene once we started settling as civilized, like homo sapiens, right? So that is one difference. But let me tell you, howsoever protected you think you are from germs, we are all surrounded by it anywhere we stay. Okay. And that's why immune system is one system that has to be active and working 24 into 7. It cannot shut off or take rest, or and go, and not, or get weakened. The moment it gets weakened, we are more prone to get infections. Okay. So that's it about immune system. And as Iram rightly pointed out, there are multiple layers. We don't have, when we talk about immunity, we should not just go directly inside the body and talk about antibodies and white blood cells, though they are the major players when it comes to disease causing organisms. But immunity overall can be divided into two parts. One is called innate immunity. The word innate means it's hardwired, it is inside our bodies right from birth. And the other is acquired immunity. Okay, is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So innate is by birth and acquired is you develop that, yes, after birth. Okay, now talking about, define it for you, so write down the overall ability of a host organism, the overall ability of the host organism. Why I'm using the word host here? Because pathogens, whenever they attack a human body, the human body is like a host to them. Okay. The overall ability of a host organism to fight to fight the disease causing organism, to fight the disease causing organism through the components of immune system, through the components of the immune system is called immunity. Okay, it's called immunity. Is that clear? Is it clear, everyone?
Sir,
Yes. Go ahead.
sir, can you please explain
Someone said sir,
the
right?
definition?
Am I audible, people?
So your voice is lagging.
The definition? Okay, is my voice better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so what are you saying, Parker? Should I explain the definition again?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I was saying the definition is that's the overall ability of the host organism, any host organism. It's not like immune system is only present in humans, it's also present in other organisms, every organism. Okay. Because every organism has to fight other disease causing organisms. So the overall ability of a host organism to fight the disease causing organism through the components of the immune system. So in different organisms, there are different components or different things that make up the immune system. Okay. So all those components provide immunity against disease causing pathogens.
Sir,
Is that clear,
components
Parker?
as in?
Components as in, if you say antibodies are one component, they are released by WBCs. So white blood cells are another component, macrophages are another component, acid in the stomach is another component, saliva, mucus, skin, all these are components of system, right? If you remove one, the immune system will get weakened, but will not completely uh, uh, vanish. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So
So,
let's first talk about, yes,
so
go ahead.
so when we talk about any system like cardiovascular system or
Mhm.
reproductive system, they're probably together, right? They're in cohesion. But where is this system exactly present? Immune system.
Right. So that's a good question. Immune system is not a it cannot be a localized system. That's what I've told you. So when we talk about any system, that system takes up a role. And based on the role, we know that where that system is. For example, nervous system. So we know the central thing is sitting in our head, and then it has a long extension called spinal cord, and then the neurons go everywhere in our body for sensation, right? But the major processing happens in that organ which is sitting in the head, right? When we talk about cardiovascular, we know that the cardia, the heart, is sitting in the center of the chest cavity, and then it has arteries to uh, give blood to the body and veins to bring it back, and then so on so forth, right? We have different organs located. For immune system also, we have localized organs, right? But there are multiple of those. Like you said, immunity is of various different kinds. In humans, there are two broadly different kinds of immunity that often work together, like innate immunity and the acquired immunity. So for innate immunity, if you are saying that the barrier method of immunity, so that is your skin. So skin is everywhere. So it's not at all localized anywhere. So everywhere there is skin, you can say that the physical barrier of innate immunity is working there, right? If you are talking about mucus to trap germs, every lining of our body, internal lining, has mucus, from our nose to our mouth to the esophagus to digestive tract. Everything is lined with mucus, correct? So it's everywhere. When we talk about even when we talk about acquired immunity and antibody producing cells, they are produced and they are present in the blood. So they also literally go everywhere in the body. And it also makes sense, right? Because immune system has to be activated everywhere, each and every nook and corner of our body, each and every distant cell in our body is prone to infection. Bacteria will not say that I will only attack the fingers and the toes, and I will not attack the head. It can attack from anywhere, right? Infection can happen from anywhere. And based on the mode of infection, our immunities the components of our immunity also change a little and adapt. So anything that wants to affect the lung, we know that it will either enter through the nose or through the mouth, because through the throat it can go into the lungs. It will not start attacking from the from the eyes or from the ears. Makes sense, right? But other sorts of infection can attack from eyes and ears, from your fingers, and other skin allergies, etc., etc. Skin infection, sorry, not allergies. So does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Does it give you sort of some answer? So there is no, it's a question to which the answer is there is no localization of immune system. Yeah, it's a central system. It's everywhere.
Yes, sir.
I should say global system with respect to the body. Yeah, so talking about innate immunity, first thing, write down innate immunity. There are some characteristics of innate immunity. And what do we mean by innate? It means by birth, right? So if it is by birth, then how does it know what kind of pathogens, sorry, it has to encounter? It cannot, right? Before birth, a body cannot know what it is going to encounter. Yes or no?
Yes.
So it cannot mount a very specific response. It cannot have a specific response against specific viruses or pathogens. But what innate immunity can do, it can create something which works similarly on everything. Okay, and those are called the broad checkpoint in immunity. So first thing is that innate immunity is non-specific because it cannot distinguish between the virus of dengue and the virus of HIV, or the bacteria that causes pneumonia, or the bacteria that causes a throat infection. So it's non-specific. And secondly, so when I say non-specific, it means it's generalized. And how can you, so if I ask you, you know that something is going to enter into your territory. Okay, so you want to protect your territory, but you don't know who or what or how does that person looks, or is she a male or a female or a child or a grown human. So what will you do? You have no specifics of the person who's a threat to your community or to your territory, and you know that it is trying to enter. So what will you do? You will just check everything that enters in your territory, right? There is no other way. Correct? Does it make sense, people? A widespread checking. Or you will create a barrier first throughout your territory. So that's why innate immunity is based on the barrier. Okay. So it has a write down a few points. Innate immunity is non-specific, and it creates different types of barrier. It creates different type of barriers to avoid the entry of pathogens. So that's all it can do. And these barriers can be divided into layers, starting from the outermost layer, which is our skin. So the first barrier is called physical barrier. It's literally a barrier. And this consists of what can you think this consists of? Go ahead. So it consists of skin, right?
Yes, sir.
Your skin is the first barrier. And why is skin a barrier? Why is skin a barrier? How does it help us from infections? Like how does it prevents infection? Suppose a virus or a bacteria comes and sits on your skin, which it does every time. Every time you have millions and millions of viruses and bacteria sitting on some part of your skin, outer skin. but they never cause an infection because you can just wash them off. And the main reason why skin acts as a barrier is because it's dead. So multiple layers, it's not like the whole skin is dead. Skin as a tissue is not dead, but the outermost, multiple outermost layers of skin are dead, the epidermis. And the benefit it provides by being dead, that's why, you know, um, when you moisturize your skin, you have to keep hydrated, you have to keep your skin hydrated. um, it has to seep in within few layers. Or during the winters, if you take something sharp and just, like anything, like even your own nail or something just goes over your skin, you see a white mark sometimes if your skin is too dry. So when it's too dry and flaky, you can clearly see that the upper layers are non-living. And that prevents any bacteria from entering. So if a bacteria lands on a living cell, it can just enter inside the living cell or send the toxin inside the living cell and can create infection. But skin prevents. Now, then you will ask a question, then why do we have certain skin infections, right?
Yes.
We do have certain skin infections. If skin is a barrier, we still do have skin infections. And that's true because all different, so our body has different types of skin, and some things can penetrate these dead layers, but not all the things. So for example, fungal. So most of the skin infections which happen on the epidermis are caused by fungus, because fungus can grow. And if it stays there, the spores or the mycelium is there, you cannot wash it off clearly. Fungus can cause growing infection on the skin because fungus can actually grow on dead and decaying matter. But a bacterial infection that happens on skin only always happens on the softer edges of the skin, where the skin is in contact with the inner epithelium, like the corners, the nose, the ear, the corner of lips, or the area between our fingers and the toes. These are the most vulnerable regions for skin infection. Or the folds of the skin. For example, our elbow, like from where the skin folds towards inside, the opposite of the elbow in the arm, and armpits and knee folds and all these things. So these are more vulnerable places for skin infection. But skin does act as a barrier. The other thing is the mucus. The inner layers of the skin, the internal epitheliums, for example, the nasal epithelium or the mouth cavity, the buccal cavities epithelium, all these are coated by mucus everywhere in our body. And mucus is actually slightly acidic in nature, and also it's very viscous. So if we are inhaling or we are eating, something is entering through these openings, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, all of them have one or the other kind of mucus. So they get stuck to the mucus, and mucus acts as a trap, a physical trap, which does not allow pathogens to come inside. And where do you find this mucus? Everywhere, right? You find mucus in the respiratory epithelium, gastrointestinal, like the stomach, food pipe, and all, urogenital tracts, like the urinary bladder, ureters, urethra, everywhere. And they always keep trapping microbes that are trying to enter our body. As we go in from this physical barriers, we then encounter the physiological barriers. Now, physiological barriers are which are present. What is the difference between physical and physiological? Sometimes we don't pay attention to these words, but anyone knows the difference between physical and physiological? And there is a very good system that is used to define it. Remember when you studied respiratory system in humans? There was a line, I don't know if your teachers taught you, when we have to define, when we have to distinguish between breathing and respiration, we say that breathing is a physical phenomena because when you breathe in and out, you are actually gushing in air and inhaling in air and exhaling out air. But respiration is a physiological phenomena because it's happening at a cellular level, at a tissue level inside your body. It's not just happening as a physical thing. Okay, so physiological barriers will include your, when you go inside, for example, acid in stomach. How it is a physiological barrier? Because how it acts is by killing the pathogens through by the effect of that acid. Or saliva in the mouth also does the same thing. So all these liquids, acid in the stomach, saliva in our mouth, and tears. Tears are also liquids, and they are antimicrobial. So acid, saliva, and tears. Tears are also antimicrobial, and that's why it's important for tears to be coming out, because it cleans. It has a function of cleaning the eyes and keeping the eyes away from infection. Yes, Parker, go ahead.
Sir, I don't understand what physiological barriers are.
Yeah, you want to add to it?
No, sir. Can you please explain it?
Oh, you could not understand. Okay, sorry. I thought you said you could understand. So I thought you were adding. So physiological barriers are that act not just by the physicality, just by their presence. For example, skin and mucus are not doing chemical reactions to kill the pathogens, right? They are just present there. Skin is just present there like a fence, and mucus is like a fishing net. So they are just trapping pathogens and not allowing it to enter. So that's why they are physical barrier. Anything physical, a wall is a physical barrier. Okay. Physiological barrier is which is inside the body, and it has physiology, like the working chemistry of the body, because of which they are able to kill the pathogens. So acid in the stomach is produced by the cells in the stomach, and it actually kills the bacteria or any pathogen by reaction. So acid reacts and acid kills, right? It's corrosive in nature. Saliva in the mouth is also acidic, and that is also secreted by salivary glands. Tears in the eyes are also secreted by the tear glands. So these are physiological barriers. The way they act is not just they are there and bacteria just come and get traps in it. They are actually secreted for this function, okay, physiologically. And there are diseases in which humans cannot form or can form more than required acid, saliva, and tears in all cases. So those are physiological problems that cause different disorders. So if you're producing too much or too little of any of this, then there is a problem. Okay.
Yes, sir.
You understand now the physiological barriers?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let's say there is a pathogen that could not get caught by physical barrier and also could evade the physiological barrier. Then we go and it goes inside the system. And we are not talking about acquired immunity yet. Do you think that there is anything innate immunity can still do? Yes, it can. So if something um, can fool the physical and the physiological barrier both, then there is cellular barriers at disposal. So at the level of cells in the body, the third type of barrier is cellular barriers. So these are, as you can understand, these are cells that are produced in the body for this purpose of fighting pathogens or killing pathogens. So there are different kind of cells, like someone mentioned WBC. Whoever mentioned WBC was right. So types of leukocytes, WBCs are called leukocytes. You know that? The word leuko, what does the word leuko means? Do you know the names? Why are the names given the way they are for the blood cells? What is RBC? Red blood cell, and it is called erythrocyte. Do you know these or you don't know these? People?
Yes, sir. Anyway.
It's a little detour, but it's important. So what is erythrocyte means? Okay, just take a look at it. Try to figure out why are RBCs called erythrocytes, WBCs are called leukocytes. And I'll give you a hint to connect to. When we say blood cancer, the biological name for that disease is leukemia. Okay, so that will give you a hint. Leukocytes, leukemia. What are platelets called? Anyone knows what are platelets called biologically?
They clot the blood, right?
They clot the blood, yes. They're called thrombocytes. Okay, so these names have meaning. And the word leukocyte means, so leuco is for lack of color, or no color, or it does not means white. We call them white blood cells in contrast to the red blood cells, because red blood cells looks red and white blood cells do not have a color. So I don't know why we should have called it colorless blood cells, but we call them white blood cells. So they don't have a color and they don't have shape, a defined shape most of the times. And these cells can actually move around through how does amoeba moves. And that movement is called something. What is it called? Do you remember that? It's like they can just crawl around and they can phagocytose. Okay, they can actually go and hunt bacteria and other pathogens in the blood, and they engulf it, and then they destroy it inside their cells, inside their own cell. So these cells are the cellular barriers that continuously keeps hunting for pathogens in our body. So write down first is PMNL, neutrophils, polymorphonuclear leukocytes. These names you don't have to, remember. Just remember that polymorpho means multiple shapes of nuclear. So multiple shapes of the nucleus, polymorphonuclear lymphocyte, polymorphonuclear leukocytes. It's called PMNL cells. Okay. And they are also known as neutrophils. Neutrophils. So whenever anyone has infection, and doctors say one of the standard and earlier ways diagnostic tool is to go for a blood test. And when you go for a blood test, how do the doctors know that you have an infection or inflammation in the body? Whenever there is infection in the body, whose numbers do you think should be increased in the body? WBCs, right? So these neutrophils, their number will increase in the body, and you will see in a blood sample lots and lots of neutrophils, more than a normal physiological number. And that is a hint that your body is under infection. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, and write down monocytes and natural killer cells. Monocytes and natural killer cells. Okay, so apart from these cells, there are monocytes in the blood. Again, there are types of WBCs, and NKC, natural killer cells. Their name says that they are killer cells. They kill unwanted pathogens in our body. And we have macrophages. These are big lymphocytes, WBCs. There are both blood macrophages and tissue macrophages. So these macrophages, sometimes they are tissue resident, like in different tissues of the different organs, muscles. There are macrophages that keep moving around here and there. They can also change their shape and just crawl between cells and tissues. And they're constantly like a vigilant, like police patrol vans in our body. And they find the pathogen, engulf it, destroy it. Okay. So all these maintain the cellular barrier in our body, another innate immunity component. All these are by birth present in our body. That's why. Even if some things are not, completely taken over by these cellular barriers, and let's say any virus or a pathogen infected target cells. Let's say it wanted to infect some cells in the kidney or in the liver or in the skin or in the muscle, and it did that. So there are the last barrier is known as the cytokine barrier. Now these are molecules. So we started with a tissue organ level. Skin is an organ. Then we went to something that the organ secretes, like mucus. Many organs secretes mucus. Then from organ level, we came to specific organs and what they secrete, like components. So one step down. Then we came to cellular level, like, and now we are going inside the cell and we are coming to molecular level. So it's called cytokine barrier. Cytokine are molecules. And what happens in this is, whenever there is an infected cell, for example, let's say a virus infected cell, which is infected to a level where it cannot overcome or kill all the viral load that it has. So what do these cells do? They start secreting certain proteins, which are a signal protein called interferons. Have you heard of this name before? Interferons.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So these are proteins that signal the nearby cells. Okay. So you can write down interferons, which signal the nearby non-infected cells, which signals the nearby non-infected cells and protect them from further infection and protect them from further infection by activating by activating the other components of immune system. Okay, specifically I'm talking about the adaptive or acquired immune system here. So this is like a what do you say, altruistic act, where the cell which is infected knows somehow that the cell is not going to survive, right? The cell has to die. So the cell will start secreting interferons that go and activate. It creates a panic, an emergency situation in the nearby cells and tissues, and that activates the immune system as a whole. And even if that cell dies, it will protect and signal the other cells that protect yourself. Okay. Do you understand the cytokine barrier?
Sir, can you explain again?
Yeah. So if a pathogen can get, like, cannot be caught by any of the above barriers and still successfully infects the target cell. And in that case, the target cells often secrete a protein called interferon. Okay, these are cytokines, are cell molecules. Cyto means cell, kines are what they are secreted. So cytokines are molecules secreted by cells like interferons. Now there are different types of interferons that are secreted when there is infection of a virus versus another bacteria or something else. So these interferons basically are signaling proteins that protect the other non-infected cells from that same infection by activating the overall immune system or the other components of immune system which were not activated or which the virus or the bacteria fooled. Okay, so it's like I'm gone, so I can't be saved now. But before I go, I'll make sure that everyone around me is safe, and I should signal them all that see, this virus has invaded me. So be careful, and do whatever you can to not get infected. Okay, so many viruses have evolved the strategy where they infect in a manner that even the cell should not know in the beginning that they are infected. It's like hideous infection so that they do not produce lots of interferons. Okay, and they can multiply. And once the immune system gets to know, by that time the infection is spread. Do you understand now, Parker?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this was innate immunity. Okay, it contains of 4 barriers: physical, physiological, cellular, and the innermost cytokine. And now we talk about acquired immunity. So anyone would like to guess what could be acquired immunity? So innate immunity has no role played by its by antibodies. So it's antibody free a system. And innate immunity is present in all organisms or all animals, and also in insects and invertebrates, right? But acquired immunity or adaptive immunity is only present in vertebrates. So in insects, we do not have a classical acquired immunity. They only rely on innate immunity. Though research now is suggesting us ways by which even innate immunities can adapt and learn from multiple infections, sequential infections. So one problem with innate immunity is because it is non-specific, it will not learn. It will never learn. It will just be what it is. It's like a barrier system. So if I am prone to one type of infection, let's say someone got a disease or someone got a bacterial infection and then the body recovered from it. Now, what you would like your body to do is remember that infection and remember what the body did to get rid of the infection. And next time, if the same infection happens, your body should not go to show such severe symptoms. Your body should be able to fight back because it has the experience of fighting back the same pathogen. Correct? You would like that to happen. Yes or no? Yep. People, make sense or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that is also what happens to us. And for many of our diseases, for example, if someone got a chicken pox as a kid and then you recovered from it, the chances that you will get chicken pox again in your life drastically goes down. Okay, I will not say it's always zero, but it drastically goes down. And next time, even if your body encounters the same virus, your body will fight back more robustly. So innate immunity is unable to do that. Innate immunity cannot mount more aggressive responses after the first response. Okay, because you can understand it's mostly a barrier system, so it cannot adapt accordingly. That's why vertebrates have adaptive or acquired immunity. Now, it's adaptive in nature. And more importantly, it's specific. So it is specific to pathogen. So it's pathogen specific because this is how it gets created in the first place. So it is very specifically created when the pathogen enters. Now, whenever any pathogen enters the body, what happens is there is a fight between the body and the pathogen, and that gets stored as a memory. So it has a memory component. Acquired immunity is characterized by memory. There is no memory component in classical innate immunity. Okay. So what does it mean? So write down acquired immunity is pathogen specific, and it is characterized by memory, memory of the encounter between the pathogen and the body. And if it is a memory, I can ask you, the memory should be stored in some or the other way, right? And how can I say that it is a memory? What does it mean? It means that when the pathogen and when the body encounters a pathogen for the first time, it produces a primary response which is of low intensity. So you can write down first, and in the first encounter, in the first encounter with pathogen, the body produces primary response. And this primary response is low intensity. Sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times, why do we fall sick? Like someone asked me a question in one of my classes. A student asked me a question that if we have so much in our body already in place, we have 4 types of barriers, plus we have cells that can adapt to a pathogen coming in, can form antibodies, then why do we fall sick at all? Like, we should not fall sick at all, correct? But we do fall sick because the barriers are right there, they don't learn. So the reason that we do not stay sick 365 days a year is because everything is working fine. So you also have to appreciate that in 365 days in a year, even if you're sick for 65 days, which is like too much, but then still think that you are not ill for 300 days. And that's because both your innate and acquired immunity is able to handle whatever it's exposed to. But sometimes that exposure is either too severe in numbers, so the number of pathogen or the load of pathogen. For example, you ate uh, you know what do you say? You ate damaged, infected food, or the food was already uh, rotting, or something was rotten. There was
Contaminated.
loads and loads of contaminated. Yeah, thank you so much. Great word. You had a contaminated food where the pathogen load was too high, and just one bite of it or two bites put so much of bacteria in the body that by the time our barriers of innate immunity plus adaptive immunity could tackle it, it went inside the target tissues and cells and started multiplying, and we got infection. And that's why that's how we fall sick, because always the primary response is of low intensity. And it makes sense because you are learning. So when you are learning to ride a bicycle, you cannot learn and at the same time ride it at a great speed, right? You will be slow, you will not cover much of a distance, you will fall here and there, and that's how you mount a response and learn. So primary response is always low intensity, and sometimes if the pathogens are stronger than this response, they can cause us disease. But body will take some time and recover. Okay. And next time if the same pathogen comes, the secondary response, then from this primary response comes memory of the encounter, and which is exactly stored as in the form of antibodies. So these antibodies are formed against specific pathogens and they are stored in the body. Okay. The word anti means against and body means against bodies. So it's not against our body, it is against the pathogen's body. Okay, the
So,
bacteria's body, which is, yes, you know.
so we often get cold and flu. So doesn't the
Right,
body make
always.
uh, memory cells
Yeah,
on that part?
yeah, great question. I think we also touched upon this question in the last class that uh, the thing is that our body do mount response against cold and cough also. You are talking about seasonal flu, right? So seasonal flu,
Yes.
every year we get seasonal flu. So the question is, why can't our body learn? Why can't our body? But it does learn. Okay. First question. First thing is, first answer is it does learn. But second thing is, it does not happen because of just one particular strain of virus or bacteria. It's a cocktail. So just like for COVID, now we have more than, I think, 12 to 15, more than a dozen of strains of COVID alone. So you can't say that if someone has taken a vaccine, they are protected against all the strains. No. And the same thing happens with this seasonal flu, the viruses, that they keep changing from each year. Like some minor changes here and there, they evolve, make new strains next year again when there are lots of rains. And because of rain, a lot of dampening, bodies dying, insects dying here and there. So during the rainy season, always you will see, or during the season when it's changing from summers to winters, you will always see a high spike in the cases of viral flus, right? Fever and that. And it specifically it stays for 3 to 5 days every time and then goes away on its own. Even if you don't take any medicine and just take paracetamol for fever, that's a symptomatic treatment. Even if you don't take that and you can somehow bear the fever, if it's not beyond a point that it hurts you, it will still be subsided in some days. So we can't just um, not get flu because every time the virus comes a little changed. Does it answer your question, Iram? That's
Yes.
constantly evolving, and the same will happen with COVID also along the time. In few more years, like 5 to 10 years, COVID will become a part of the cocktail of these viruses that are always around us. So COVID, someone somewhere will catch COVID, show the symptoms of a sore throat, loss of taste or smell. For some time, the doctor will say, please isolate yourself, take a week's or 2 weeks treatment, and they will be fine. So COVID is not going to, unless and until something really problematic mutates in the virus and the virus becomes again more lethal. So viruses over time becomes more better and better pathogens. And who is a better pathogen? A better pathogen is that goes inside the body and does not let the body know a lot and does not kill the host. So you will see in case of most of the viral diseases, it has been seen that for the first time when it starts affecting as an epidemic or pandemic, the lethality rate is the highest. And then over time, it decreases. Over time, the transmissibility increases. Like it's very easy to catch COVID or it's very easy to catch common cold, but you will not die from it. And also the fact that we all have taken vaccines, we will have immunity against multiple strains of COVID. That's also the reason that we will not die if we are vaccinated. So vaccinations are very important because they give you an edge over the infection always. And again, another misconception in society is if someone takes a vaccine and after taking vaccine the next year he gets COVID positive, people will say, oh, the vaccines are all hoax and bogus, they're all a scam. uh, I took a vaccine, why I'm getting COVID again? Because they don't understand how it works. Taking a vaccine does not mean that next time the virus comes in your body, it will be just killed outside the body. The virus will still enter the body. It will still multiply in the body. But what vaccination gives you is a standing army to fight. So it will start the fight much early when the virus is still not, in abundant numbers, and the fight will start because you already have a standing army. And this time you will not need a vent to go on ventilator, or you will not develop a pneumonia in the lungs, but this time you will get rid of the virus and the COVID infection just by some sore throat, some 2 or 3 days of fever. And I think that's a good trade, right? It's still better. Do you understand what it means, people?
Yeah.
So it's always good to have immunity against. Yes, so there's a memory of the encounter from which is stored in the form of antibodies, and the the second response, the second encounter, I should say, the second encounter will lead to a secondary response, and this time because of antibodies, it will be of a very high intensity. This is also the reason why some people, like most of the people, complain that when they took the first shot of the vaccine, they suffered fever and some body ache. But when they took the booster dose, which is always in some higher titer, they suffered more fever and a severe ache than before. But it's fine. If you get an ache, body ache, or fever for a couple of days, it means that there are antibodies being formed in your body, and that's good. It's better to get a fever than to get admitted in ICU on a ventilator, struggling with life. So that's the trade-off that we have to do when we fight infections. So do you understand how acquired immunity overall works, everyone? So subsequent
So,
encounters, yes, Iram, go ahead.
so after we get acquired immunity, will the innate immunity vanish off?
No, innate immunity will always, because see, what are the components of innate immunity? Skin. You're not going to lose your skin ever. It is not at all related to acquired immunity. Innate immunity is right there from the birth. When you had no antibody against common cold, against COVID, against pneumonia, against anything, any virus, any bacteria, when you were born, you still were born with mucus, skin, WBCs, natural killer cells, macrophages, and all the cells had the ability to produce cytokines. So it's not like once you have acquired immunity, you no longer need innate immunity. Of course, in fact, our innate immunity saves us the most. Most of our pathogens, when they fall on our skin, are unable to cause infection because of skin. When we inhale, most of our lung infecting pathogens, when they are in lesser numbers, they get just trapped by the mucus, and we never get the infection. Because see, once the infection happens, once there is an inflammation, once there is an encounter, then only acquired immunity will come into play. Do you understand? Because it's not a barrier. Acquired immunity is actually the warfare that's happening inside the body, which is the battleground now. But innate immunity is avoiding the war at all. We are not at all allowing the bacteria or virus to come in, to replicate and start a war. Do you understand, Iram?
Yes, sir.
So it will never go away. Yes, what happens over time is both acquired and innate immunity gets weakened as you age. So with age, immunity drops down. That's one thing. Yeah. Make sense? Parker and Aisha?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. The primary and the secondary immune response, the primary and the secondary immune response are carried out with the help of two special types of lymphocytes. With the help of two special types of lymphocytes. Okay. So whether it's primary and secondary, response. Both are carried out by one B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Okay. Now, what does the word B and T tells us here? Both are present in our blood. B lymphocytes, the word B here is for
Bone marrow.
Yeah, so they are produced in bone marrow. And T, thymus. Okay, and this is an organ. It's a very tiny organ that degenerates as we grow. So as we grow, like from teenager to adult, the thymus degenerates and becomes smaller and smaller. And then by the time you're old, you don't have a functional thymus in the body. So now B lymphocytes, just always remember, they produce antibodies. So they are antibody secreting cells. B lymphocytes are antibody secreting cells. And what do that's why even when you are old, you still can produce antibodies, right? Because you have B lymphocytes, you have bone marrow. What decreases is the ability to produce T lymphocytes. And whatever T lymphocytes you already have, which are in circulation, they work. And T lymphocytes, what they do, they help the B lymphocytes in antibody secretion. So they do not directly produce antibodies, but they help B lymphocytes to produce antibodies. So if you do not have T lymphocytes, still your immunity will become weaker and lower because the functionality of B lymphocytes depend on T lymphocytes. Okay. And there are T lymphocytes called T helper cells. And this is exactly the immune cells that HIV virus attacks and kills and destroys. So if you don't have T helper cells, you can now realize that the whole adaptive immunity will go down. Okay. Are you able to connect dots, Aisha, Iram, and Parker? Yes, no? Okay. Okay. Now let me insert an image here. If you all can find a picture in your textbook that talks about, yes, this is the picture. Can you all see this picture? Wait. Have to drag it. Yeah, can you all see this from your textbook? This is a schematic representation of the structure of an antibody molecule. Wait. I'm not able to drag it. Yeah. Yes. So it's like a Y structure. Basically, so this protein molecule has two chains. You can see, I'll label it chain 1 and 2, and then this is chain 3 and 4. So there are two heavy chains which are connected together and also intra and interconnected through sulfide linkage. And you know now that proteins are folded and connected together through sulfide linkage, right? Disulfide linkages. Remember the case of insulin? How the $1 million problem got solved? When Eli Lilly, the company, figured out how to create disulfide linkages between chain A and B, removing the chain C, right? To make a
Yes.
functional insulin. Yeah. So similarly, this is also a protein, and just like all proteins, there are disulfide linkages between two chains and also in the same chain to create foldings and structure. So this structure, so the two heavy chains are connected together, and also the two light chains are connected to the heavier chains. Two light chains are not connected together to each other. Okay, they are intra-connected within themselves. Like you can see this here. There are in here disulfide linkages happening within the same chain, but it happens between two heavy chains. It happens between a heavy and a light chain. It happens um, among the heavier chains themselves and also the light chains themselves. But two light chains do not form disulfide linkages between them because they are very distant apart. Okay. And on one side, this side, which is called the N terminal. So if you see the structure of amino acid, why it is called amino acid? Because on one side there is a amine group, which is nitrogen heavy, and on the other side there is a carboxylic acid. That's why it's amino acid, which is a carbon moiety. So one is called the N terminal, where the amine group, all the amine groups. So it's like amine group, carbon group, amine group, carbon group. This is how all the amino acids will be aligned together to make a polypeptide chain, right? Just like phosphate and sugar in the DNA. Remember 3 prime, 5 prime end in a DNA or RNA? Yes, no, people? Yeah. So similarly, one side which is called the N terminal, it has the antigen binding site. So antibodies, how they help us in getting rid of the antigens is that on one side they have antigen binding site, and that site is towards the N terminal. And remember, because it is a Y structure, it will have two sites where antigen can bind. Okay, here also and here also. And then only one side will be a C side where it will not bind to antigen. Okay. Now this structure, this simple design is very, very effective because one antibody can bind to two sides. So what they do actually, they help in clumping the antigens together. So if I say that everyone hold on to two different antigens, then everyone will hold on to two. So basically you are not allowing antigens to freely move and cause infection in the system. So they clump, they aggregate antigens together. And whenever there is antigen clumping that happens, it's very easy for macrophages and these natural killer cells to just kill them in bulk, to recognize this clump and kill them in bulk. Do you understand this, everyone? Yeah.
Yeah.
So antibody molecules cause antigen. They bind to. Each write down each antibody molecule has two antigen binding sites. Each antibody molecule has two antigen binding sites. And therefore, it can cause clumping or aggregating the antigens. It can cause clumping and aggregating of antigens. Now we have different types of antibodies in our body, and this classical structure that I have shown you, which has two heavy chains and two light chains, is called H2L2 structure. H2L2. Okay. Is it clear, everyone? H2L2
Yeah.
structure. So if they ask you what explain or briefly describe the H2L2 structure of antibody and what does it mean, so this is what the connotation means: two heavy chains and two light chains. Now we have different types of antibodies in the body, and they are called Ig. Ig stands for immunoglobulins, and it's simple. Just like hemoglobin, they work in immune system. So their name talks about their function. Immuno means they work in the immune system, and globulins means that they are proteins. So they are proteins of the immune system. So they are called Ig in short, immunoglobulins. Now you have IgA, you have IgE, you have IgG, and you have IgM. Okay, I remember it as mega. Immune system is a mega event, MEGA. These are the four antibodies, out of which IgM is the biggest antibody in terms of size because it's pentameric, or you can say it's multimeric. Like it is not just one. So five such H2L2 structures come together to make one IgM. So it's a big antibody in itself, and you can also understand if it is so big, it will have so many antigen binding sites, so it will cause more and more antigen clumping and antigen arresting or antigen aggregation. So IgM is multimeric, to be specific pentameric, and IgA is the first antibody that we have in our body. Okay, it is given to a baby through mother's milk, colostrum. So when babies are born, another important reason they should be fed by mother's milk is because IgA can cross and come into the mother's milk, and through that it can go inside the human baby's body. Okay, so it's the first, and how I remember it, because you can remember it, A is the first alphabet. So the first thing you learn when you learn English language is A. And the first thing you get as antibody is IgA. Okay, it's small. Is it clear, everyone? So anyone has any doubts?
No, sir, no doubt.
Okay. And in the acquired immunity, antibodies play a very important role, but they can only play a role in the blood because antibodies are present in the blood, right? Because they are secreted by blood cells. So you will not see antibody present deep in a tissue where there is no blood, right? In a tissue's cell. So they are present everywhere where the blood goes. And if the infection is in blood, antibodies can do something. They can mount a response. That's why the response that is mounted by antibodies is called humoral immune response. Okay, so write down this point. Antibodies are responsible for humoral immune response. But not all infections just stay in the blood, right? there are tissue specific infections or organ specific infections as well. What about those? How will acquired immunity come there? Or how is acquired immunity going to function there? Any idea? That cannot happen through the humoral response, or in normal words, this humoral response is also called blood mediated immunity, because this kind of immunity works through blood, through the blood cells. Is it clear, everyone? Just like blood mediated immunity, which is regulated by antibodies, we have another type called cell mediated immunity or cell mediated immune response. Okay, and in blood mediated immunity, it is mostly which type of lymphocyte is responsible for blood mediated immunity? B lymphocytes, because B lymphocytes only are the cells that produce and secrete antibody. There is something called cell mediated immune response or cell mediated immunity, and this is created by T lymphocytes. Okay, do you understand the difference between the two? Antibodies are present in the blood because they are secreted by B lymphocytes in the blood. So that's called humoral. The word humoral means blood. So humoral immune response, or the blood-based immune response, or the blood-mediated immunity. And then the second type is called cell-mediated immune response, and it's mediated by T lymphocytes. And how does this work? How can we? Where do you think cell-mediated immunity come into picture? This particularly works in places or in cases where blood is not there to take a decision, or blood is not, basically blood is everywhere, but the cells are the ones that are taking decisions to fight or to not fight. So, and here, because it's cell mediated immunity, one type of cell can recognize the another type of cell of the body, and they can also recognize if the cell belongs to our own body or the cell belongs to someone else's body. So this cell mediated immune response often comes into picture whenever there is a transplant. So in tissue or organ transplants, there is often called tissue or graft rejection, right? This is because of this cell mediated immune system, because the cells of our body can recognize self. Write down. Cells of our body can recognize and distinguish self from non-self. Okay. So when someone gets a kidney transplant and they get a donor kidney and they put it into the host, after that, the patient is given immune suppressants. What does the word immune suppressant mean? What does the word suppression means? People, quickly, come on. What do we mean by suppressants? To suppress something, right? So immunosuppressants are basically chemicals that suppress your T cell mediated immunity. So why are we suppressing our own immunity? Because in case of a transplant, if you do not suppress the T cell mediated immunity, the T cell mediated immunity will reject that tissue. The body is not able to understand that this transplantation happened for my own benefit. It will always see that tissue as a foreign particle and will always attack it, attack and destroy, kill it, try to kill those cells. So most of the deaths in transplants does not happen because the organ was not working properly. Most of the deaths happen because of immune response related complications, rejections. Rejection is the most important thing. So even in case of, if you remember, I think in early 2022, it was a news that the first xenograft became successful. So there was a man in US who was given a heart, who was transplanted a heart, which was not a human heart. It was a heart. Basically, it was a hybrid of a human and a pig heart. So it was taken out from a pig's body, but that pig was genetically modified for that organ, and that organ was a mixture of human and a pig heart. That heart was transplanted in that human because anyways that human was terminally ill and was about to die, and because of that heart the human could live 2 months more. But people just said just 2 months. How does it matter? But it does matter because first thing it told us, it was an experimental thing. The person lived 2 months, and 2 months later he died because of the similar kind of complications of the transplantation, which includes graft rejection, tissue rejection by the cell-mediated immunity. So it gives us two things. It tells us that we are not at a stage where we can harvest organs in animals and transplant it in humans yet, but we are close. We even life for 2 months is a big success for science, even if it's not a big success for the person who got the transplant. The person was supposed to die 2 months earlier, but instead died 2 months later. But we know that what went wrong, what we need to change, how can we make it better. And today it looks like a sci-fi that animal organs can work in human body, or organs harvested in animals, which are human organs, can work in human body. But it's not a far-fetched dream, you know. In the near future, people can harvest human organs in animals before, like suppose you get to know that someone's liver is about to crash or fail or is not working properly. So much ahead in time, you can start growing a liver from your own genes, like from your own genetics, into another animal, like a pig or a lamb, and then take it out from there and put it in the human body. And because that liver came from a mixture of your and that animal's genetics, over the time, these kind of rejections will be, this is the idea, to take care of these rejections, right? Because if it is completely a human organ, then the problem is growing it in animal, because animals cell mediated immunity will try to kill it, reject it. And if it's totally an animal, it won't work in human. So somewhere, if we can find that balance, if we can do it, it's not doable completely now, but maybe in future. Yeah, so just a little detour. But do you understand how cell-mediated immunity works and where does it works, people?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. So this is about this. So you can write down. In case of tissue matching or blood group matching, whenever we need to do a transplant, we do two things. We match the blood group. Of course, it's very important. And we match the tissue. Tissue matching is very complicated, and I'm not going to teach you here, but just like blood group matching, I told you that blood grouping can be done on more than 200 different parameters, but we choose just two. One is the ABO group and the RH. So we just take into consideration whether it's blood A, B, AB, or O, and whether it's RH positive or negative. But there are much more antigens on the surface of blood cells than this. Similarly, on tissues surface also there are multiple antigens and markers that we have to match between host and donor. And if there is a match, it can never be 100% match ever, unless and until you cloned that organ from your own body. But the closest the match is, the better that transplant will work. And kidney transplants are very, very, I'll not say easy, but as compared to other transplants, kidney transplants are routine and they work also, but they work with some immunosuppressants. So you can write down tissue matching and blood group matching are important before any transplant. And the patient has to take immunosuppressants all his or her life. And when you are taking immunosuppressants, you have to do the job of protecting yourself from infections. So people who live with transplanted organs and who are taking immunosuppressants cannot live a very adventurous, rowdy life. Like, I can go and try the golgappe from there, and I can, I would not like my body to be exposed to infections. I would like to keep my eating habits as hygienic as I can. I will always drink water from sources which are hygiene, or from my own bottle all the time. So these are some lifestyle complications that come up with transplantation, but it's better, better living with some constraints than dead. That's what they say. So they have to take immunosuppressants all their life. And all this is because, write down, this is because body is able to differentiate self and non-self tissue. Body is able to differentiate self and non-self tissue because of cell-mediated immune response. So anything which is non-self, the CMI, cell-mediated immunity, will reject. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is the main thing, the main crux of immune system, but there are more terms that you have studied, I'm sure, in your classes. We also categorize immune system as active and passive immunity, right? Do you know what is this? What do we mean by active and passive immunity? Have you heard or read these words?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, any idea about it? Go ahead. So basically, immunity is antibodies in the body, correct? Yes. Both active
Yes.
and passive immunity is connected to antibodies. It is not about the cell-mediated immunity. It is about the antibodies. So what is active immunity in terms of adaptive immunity, and what is passive immunity? Go ahead. Anyone?
In
Yes,
active
Iram.
immunity, it's naturally inherited. Like when a person encounters pathogen, it will produce antibodies against that pathogen. But in case of
How is it inherited then? When you say inherited, oh, you mean to say inherent? Do you mean to say inherent? Inherited is a word which is used when something is passed on from one generation to another. So neither active immunity nor passive, the adaptive immunity is not at all, like, to some extent it is, like antibodies are inherited because we get from mothers. Some antibodies we do get from mothers. But you should say inherent, like it's in internal property of the body, right? Iram?
yes,
Yeah, go ahead. First complete what you were saying.
And
Learnivio, go ahead.
in case of passive immunity, ready-made antibodies are directly given to protect the body against the foreign gene.
Yes, so you touched upon a very good point, and that's basically the crux of this thing. When I say that the immunity is active, it is active right there in your body in real time. Okay, so that's what the word active means. Okay, so I have a students council and it is active and functional in my college. So when I say this sentence, it simply means that the student council is working right there. So active immunity is whenever a pathogen enters in a body, if the body is capable of mounting an adaptive immunity, it will in the real time encounter the pathogen and produce antibodies. So that's active. Okay. Passive immunity, like Iram said, before or after or at the during the time when the pathogen is entering the body, we do not rely on body's own antibody producing mechanism, but we provide the body with preformed antibodies against the pathogen. So there, it was not actively formed in the body, but was given from outside. Now, both has advantages of their own. Active immunity will take some time. Like when we take vaccinations, right? So COVID vaccination was a type of inducing active immunity in the body. All we were giving was a mRNA for the spike protein of COVID, okay? The COVID virus. So we gave that mRNA that entered inside your cell, got translated, and the spike protein was formed. And the moment the spike protein was formed, because it's a foreign protein, our immune response will be like, oh my God, what is this thing? It does not belong to me. Maybe it's a pathogen. Let's attack it. So antigen, it will treat it as an antigen and will start killing it. So there are millions and millions of spike proteins in the body because we sent lots of RNA. And because of that, there'll be lots of antibodies produced by the body. But it is a slow response because the primary response is always low intensity and slower. So when you take another misconception that people had about COVID vaccines is if I if I took if I took the vaccine today, people are like, oh, I have taken vaccines, now I can go and roam around in the open without the mask. No, you cannot do that. Even if you have taken even if you have taken vaccine, still you are vulnerable for infection because your body will take a very sweet time of around 4 weeks, which is a month, to produce enough antibodies so that you can fight the next incoming real infection properly. So when we take vaccines, we should not be like all guards let down. We should still keep everything, like in case of COVID, I was trying to teach a lot of people through outreach programs that vaccination is not immediate protection. It will take time to generate active immunity. Okay, so it's slow, but that's the only way because we do not have any preformed antibodies in case of COVID. People were trying to do this as well. So what scientists were trying is, let's see if this works. So if a person recovered from COVID, clearly that person's body might have a lot of antibodies against COVID, right? Yes or no? Do you understand, people, what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if someone donates blood after recovering, and from that blood I can take out antibodies which are preformed, and that inject those antibodies in someone who got the infection very fresh, will it help? So scientists thought it might help, but it did not work that effectively. Okay, so that was also tried. But also the fact that it could not be done in a proper large scale manner because everyone was suffering, it was not doable. But that would have been a way of doing passive immunity in COVID, but we could not do it in case of COVID successfully. But where do you think passive immunity could be a good thing, a successful tool? Any idea? where do you think passive immunity helps more than active immunity? So you understood passive immunity, right? When ready-made antibodies are given directly to protect against foreign agents, right? Foreign pathogens. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So passive immunity is very, very helpful in cases where we do not have the time for the patient to, to form its own antibody, especially in case of snake bites or insect or reptilian bites where those contain toxin. Now toxins are foreign substances. When they enter inside our body, they cause a lot of harm. And suppose someone got bitten by a snake, we cannot wait for the body, because first thing is it's not fast, and venom works really fast. So if it is, there are multiple types of venoms, and worst are the snakes that contains a mixture. So toxins, venoms of snakes could be cytotoxic. If it is a cytotoxic venom, what it will attack? Can you tell me why the term cytotoxic venom? Can you see the whiteboard, people?
The cells.
Yeah, can you see the whiteboard?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's go to a side and do this exercise. So we have majorly three kinds of venoms. Cytotoxic venom. If a snake has a cytotoxic venom, it bit a person, what will happen? Suppose it bit on a hand. The word cyto means cell, so I know what it is going to attack. It's going to attack the cells wherever it bit. So it bit the hand, so the cells of the hand will start dying. So it will start causing necrosis, tissue death. Blackening, so wherever the snake bites, it becomes blackened and all the tissue starts dying. So in that case, if you do not want that venom to spread, what you can do is, if the snake bit on the finger and you do not have the anti-venom against it, then amputate the finger. You can save the whole hand and the whole person then. So cytotoxic kills cells. So tissue death, tissue necrosis. If it is hemotoxic venom, what it will do? So in the case of cytotoxic venom, there are more chances of the patient surviving because it starts killing tissue one by one. Okay. So, and the cause of death is enough damage to the tissues. Enough necrosis has been happened, so the person dies. But in case of hemotoxic, it will kill the blood. And basically, it will make the blood cells clump together. Okay. And the person dies either from cardiac arrest, the blood clogs in the heart somewhere, or it clogs in the brain or something. So blood clotting, blood clogs, cardiac arrest, all this happens in hemotoxic venom. And then the third is neurotoxic. This kills the neurons. And how will the person die in this? So the neurotoxic venom immediately. Yes, that's a good question, Parker. We'll talk about. So Parker is asking a question: how does the snake not die with the venom inside it? Great question. So, but let's first understand. So cytotoxic, hemotoxic, and neurotoxic. Neurotoxic kills the neuron. So the patient bit by the snake is more prone to die quickly. There will be paralysis because the neurons in that region where it's bit are gone, dead, and the brain will shut off. You will not be able to breathe because there is a pneumatic center in the brain that regulates our breathing. So the person is unable to breathe because the brain, the pneumatic center of the brain, respiratory center of the brain stops working. You will not also not be able to breathe. Global paralysis in within minutes, and the person dies. The brain goes in coma. So some snakes have a concoction of all the three, you know, like some Russell pit vipers, one of the most venomous snakes, have all. The question is how snakes survive with its own venom. And the answer is very simple. Snakes never let the venom go into their own system because snakes have blood, snakes have neurons, and snakes have cells. They are also organisms like us. So they have a special organ in which they produce this venom, and that organ is directly attached to their fangs. So if you see a snake mouth, which is like a very big mouth like this, I think there should be an eye also. You see big fangs here, right? In snakes, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
mostly not in the downside, more probably. And in their snout, they have an organ here that produces the venom, and it's connected to the fangs. So their fangs are hollow from inside. Okay. So the venom stays here, and when it bites any organism, that venom gets out from the fangs. So the teeth of the snakes are not teeth, they are hollow fangs like ice cream cone. And just like a melted ice cream can come from the tip if the tip has a hole, the same thing happens in the snake fangs. And that is how you can also collect snake venom, by holding the snake's mouth open and just press the fangs against uh, um, in a bottle, and they will release a lot of venom. And remember, producing this venom is very, very costly for their own body also. It's very energy taking. It's not just very costly when it's sold, because you can create a lot of anti-venom from the venom. You need venom to create anti-venom, right? Antidotes and other things. So it's also very energy heavy process. So snakes cannot just keep producing venom and just keep using it on everything. Normally, we think that's if movies and cinema has shown it in a way where if a snake sees a human, the snake kind of you know goes behind the human, hunts down the human. It's never like that. A snake will never waste its venom on anything that is bigger than its own size that it cannot swallow. So the moment a snake will see a mouse, it will attack, because it knows once I have put my venom inside, the mouse is dead, and once it's dead, I can swallow it. But if it sees a human or a cheetah or anything bigger, the first thing that the snake would like to do is run away. A snake only attacks the human when the snake is afraid for its life, when it sees no other option. So if you are just walking in a forest and if you see a snake, nothing to do. The snake will run away from you. They are as scared from us as we are from them. It will not encounter you and try to attack you unless you go chasing the snake, or you step on the snake's body mistakenly. So the moment you are walking and if you stepped on the tail, in a reflex it will just bite. Okay, but it will not do it consciously. Do you understand now, everyone? Yes, go ahead.
Sir, there are not certain videos on YouTube about like how they get out the venom from a snake, for medicine purposes.
Yeah,
And
yeah, there are. Yeah.
I see that like when they spill off the venom from their fangs,
Mhm, mhm.
some amount of venom gets into their body, like they kind of swallow it.
Kind of in their mouth. Yeah, even the
Yeah,
same thing applies when they kill a mouse with the venom and the mouse is dead. When they swallow the whole mouse, the venom also goes inside their body. Correct. Because the venom is inside the mouse only, when it goes inside,
but
when they
won't that
swallow.
kill the snake?
Yeah, right. It will affect the snake, but not kill the snake, because the snake over time has developed resistance to its own venom if it is in a smaller amount. So if you take a snake venom in an injection and inject it back into the snake in good quantity, the snake will die. Most of the times the snake will die. But if you take small amount of venom from the same snake and put it in the snake's body through injection, the snake won't. because over time, and it must be happening from millions of years. No, see, whenever a snake releases venom, obviously some amount will go in its own mouth. That's very obvious. And if that kills the snake, then this whole process is futile. And it's not just for snakes. There are tribes, there are tribal regions where snake venom is used in small quantities, and they inject it inside the bodies, their own bodies. And over time, they become great snake hunters, because even if the snake bites them, they are not dead, because they have developed resistance against it. So in a very small amount, if you're taking a neurotoxin inside, it's just like a drug. There are lots of high potential drugs made from venoms, snake venoms, which are illegal and hence sold through black markets. So it will give you hallucinogenic effect, it will give you numbness in the body, it will give you all that kind of euphoria and all these feelings that cocaine, marijuana, and other things do. So venoms, uh, in general, bodies can develop resistance against it in a long term. The reason we die from snake venom is because a lot of it comes in one go and we are not able to handle it. Does that give you an answer, Iram?
Yes, sir. So also like I've seen people in I think the Vietnamese side, people actually consume venom
Snake venom. Yeah,
wine,
right.
and they don't
They
die
put a
from it.
little. Yeah. So that's all. Again, they put this small amount of venom in wine, and through wine they just take it, and over time they develop resistance. But if you are drinking venom, let me tell you one more interesting thing. Even this applies for snakes and other organisms. If the snake is if the snake is getting the venom back in its body through mouth, snakes also have stomach, and the stomach has acid. So to be very honest with you, if a human drinks venom, the human won't die. Like logically, biologically, he shouldn't die, because venoms are just proteins. And just like any other protein, when it goes inside the stomach, directly in the stomach, it gets denatured because it's protein. HCl just denatures the protein structure and breaks it down into amino acids, smaller peptides. And in that form, it's no longer a venom. But the problem is that our buccal cavity, our teeth, our tongue, cheek should not have a cut, shouldn't have any exposed bloodstream, any exposed capillary. Because the moment that is there, the venom can directly go in the blood from there and can cause effect. But if it goes in very small amount, it won't kill, but still cause some effect. And over time, you can develop resistance. So that is another reason why snakes do not die from their own venom when it goes in their body through their mouth, when they eat the prey which they have killed by the venom, or when the same venom a little bit goes, because it gets broken down into their body, into their stomachs, into smaller peptides. It's no longer a venom. Make sense, Hiram?
Yes.
That's the difference between a venom and a poison, honestly. So many people are confused between venoms and poison. Oh, by the way, I think we're out of time, right? The discussion was good, so I couldn't get a hold of time. Okay, anyways, so people will stop here at active, but I'll take 2 more minutes. Active and passive immunity, and you have to read vaccination and immunization from your book. So what you have to read, just write down. You have to read till um, autoimmunity. Autoimmunity, which is like immune system in the body. So whatever is left, there are 2-3 paragraphs left on immunity. Active, passive, vaccination and immunization. Active immunity is vaccination, through vaccination. Passive immunity is through immunization. That's the only difference. So if you understood active and passive, you will quickly understand vaccination and immunization. Then allergies, autoimmunity, and lymphoid organ. These 3 things you have to read, and we will discuss it in the next class. Before we go to the 3 major diseases, I think AIDS, cancer, and the drugs that affect the brain, drugs and alcohol abuse. So these 3 topics are left, which we'll try to cover in the next class. Okay. And yes, so those who want to leave can leave now. I'll just take 2 more minutes to finish what me and Iram were discussing. Uh, I was saying that this is the difference between venom and poison. Venom is a protein and it only works when it reaches the target site. If it is cytotoxic venom, then it has to reach those cells where it can kill them. If it is neurotoxic, it has to reach neurons to be active and work, because it binds on the surface of the cell as to the receptors. And if it is hemotoxic, it has to reach the blood to work. If you keep a hemotoxic or a neurotoxic venom in your mouth, mix it with saliva and gulp it, nothing is going to happen. But poison, on the other hand, are chemicals that affect right wherever they are. So if a snake venom falls on skin of a person, which always mostly happens when a snake handler is taking out venom. While taking out venom, some drops, if they are sprinkled on the skin of the person, nothing will happen. But if it is a poison, it can affect, right? Because these are chemicals which affect. They don't have to go inside the bloodstream or inside the system to show effect, right? Make sense? Even coming in contact will affect. So mostly you will see that there are poisonous frogs, like poison dart frog. It secretes poison from its skin. So even if you touch it from your fingers will start showing the effect of the poison. But snakes are mostly venomous. There aren't poisonous snakes. They're all, because if there was a poisonous snake, then the poison is inside the body itself. It will always affect the snake. But poison dart frog, the poison is outside the body on the surface. So